Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining us. We hope that wherever you are watching this, you are staying warm. Of course, it is chilly here as it is in Palestine, now experiencing a big snowstorm, as we've been told. Happy New Year to you all and to your families, and our best wishes from here at the Jerusalem Fund. Today, we are joined by three speakers from an organization originally based from France, but they work all over the world, Urgence Internationale, and they are a nonprofit NGO who have offices, of course, in Palestine and work to help civilians in this marginalized circumstances with their difficulties, of course, under occupation and under siege. And they work in a variety of fields, which they will each be introducing to you. And we are very lucky to be joined by their three prominent members. First off will be Anthony de Temple, who is the head of the mission in the occupied Palestinian territories based in Ramallah. Aboud al-Sharif, based in Nablus, who is the West Bank field coordinator, and Hazem al-Madoun, who is in Gaza, also working in the humanitarian mission there. So very lucky to be based in different parts of Palestine and to be talking about their experiences. And of course, our moderator is our very own Saeed Arakat, member of Palestine Center Committee, writer, analyst, speaker, and will be leading today's talk with our three guests.
Okay, thank you, Ruqayya. I think Aman. I want to welcome you all, Anthony, Aboud, and Hazem, and I hope that you are staying warm. You know, we listen and see these reports about the snowstorm, and it's a welcome sight. I think I remember when I was a little boy growing up in Abu Dis, you know, and the snow would come from time to time and we would be thrilled and so on. So I want to welcome you all. We look forward to this discussion. And as Ruqayya said, outlined, we will have the three presentations back to back, you know, and then I will be having the discussion with you and we will start with Anthony. So please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you to you, Saeed and Ruqayya, Omar, for having us. I will try to share my screen. So that you can see our presentation. Here we are. I hope you can see it now.
Only if you could speak a bit louder, Anthony.
Yep. Okay, yes, thanks. For sure. So yes, thank you very much. I'm talking from Ramallah. We will just, with my colleagues Aboud and Hazem, present you in a very, I would say, programmatic manner the experience that our teams are facing for the last 20 years. Urgence Internationale has been operational in Palestine for 20 years now. We help Palestinian communities prepare for and respond to emergencies, and we provide the emergency response, and we advocate for the rights of Palestinians locally and internationally. Our objective and our mission is to ensure Palestinians have safe access to basic services and are prevented from forcible transfer, particularly in East Jerusalem and the occupied West Bank in Area C. We focus mostly on the access restricted areas. So we work, as I mentioned, mostly in Area C in the occupied West Bank. We work also a lot in what we call the prior coordination areas, the Palestinian land beside the illegal settlements, and the seam zone, which is the Palestinian land between the wall and the green line. And my colleague Aboud and Hazem will provide more information about that. We provide emergency response to Palestinians affected by settlers' attacks. We provide emergency assistance, and we also we work proactively with village councils to anticipate and identify the communities most at risk of settler violence. We do this through a team of 45 colleagues all over the occupied Palestinian territory with offices in Naples, Ramallah, East Jerusalem, and Gaza. Just as I mentioned, our focus is really in supporting Palestinians impacted by settler violence and Palestinians impacted by the enforcement of the access restricted areas in the Gaza Strip. As you can see, for the last 20 years, there has been a huge increase of Israeli settlements and expansion of settlements. It has increased by more than 182%, and the number of settlers increased by 375%. Overall, the settlements confiscate more than 42% of the West Bank, and we see also quite worrying development with outposts. I'm sure we are all aware of, for instance, the violence in the Beita with the establishment of an outpost, and this development of illegal outposts is quite worrying and continuing, unfortunately. In the Gaza Strip, we work mostly in the access restricted area, which is the land near the fence, and also with fishers. The access area is more than a third of the farmlands available in the Gaza Strip and 85% of the fishing zone. I will let my colleague Aboud provide you first more information about the context of the West Bank and then PUI response, and then Hazem will do the same, context in the Gaza Strip and then PUI response. Fadal, Aboud.
Yes, thank you, Anthony. Actually, I'm sorry, but I have to turn off my camera to have better connection. I'm connecting from home, so apologize in advance for that. Yes, in terms of the West Bank, this is, let's say, my focus. I'm gonna take like a few topics to brief you about in terms of the West Bank, in terms of environmental prejudice, occupation, direct and indirect measures against Palestinians. Now, first element is about access restrictions in prayer coordination areas and seam zone. When we say prayer coordination area, we mean by that all lands located in Area C in the vicinity of settlements, outposts, or military zones. This is approximately around approximately around 106 plots for olive cultivation located in prayer coordination areas across the West Bank. Those are adjacent to 250 illegal settlements and outposts. Those 106 plots represent at least 18 kilometers square across the West Bank. Now, in the prayer coordination areas, Palestinians landowners have to take prayer coordination from the Israeli civil administration to access these lands. That means they cannot access it anytime they want. On average, they can grant the access during the harvest season or plowing season for a period maximum range between 1 to 7 days maximum. The other times of the year is not accessible. However, according to FAO, each, let's say, olive grove needs at least estimated 133 days of work a year to adequately maintain these olive groves. The limited access actually in the prayer coordination areas undermine the agricultural activity there, olive oil production, consequently negatively affects both quality and the quantity of production. This is in prayer coordination areas. I'm gonna talk later what we do in prayer coordination areas as a part of our responses. Now, in terms of the seam zone, as you might know, it's like 10% of the West Bank. In the areas of the West Bank, it's around 10%. It's the area located between the wall and the green line, have been declared closed by Israeli military order. Of course, this is following the establishment. Yes.
Barrier.
Yeah, sorry?
No, go ahead, please.
Yeah. So this is basically following the establishment of the barrier wall since 2002, when it started the construction. So this is the seam zone. It's around 40 square kilometer of olive trees are located in the same zone, according to the food security sector. Of course, there are thousands of Palestinians living in these closed areas or needing access for agricultural use. That would require specific permits to access these zones. That means not anyone could access these locations or these zones, except if they have a specific or special permit from the Israeli Civil Administration. Of course, number of permits granted is significantly decreased each year. For example, 73% of requested permits to access the same zone in 2020 were rejected. We're talking about 73%. If we compare this to 2019, we are talking about a different number. In 2019, the number of rejected cases was 63%. So we're talking about 10% increase in rejection of permits to access the same zone. Now, this is, let's say, the first topic in terms of the environmental prejudice. The second topic, it's about settler violence and settlement activities. Under this topic, we have like basic components. One of them is direct violence. The second is indirect violence. If we talk about the direct violence, it's toward farmers, toward lands, toward trees, or structures. In 2021 only, OCHA, the Office for Coordinating Humanitarian Affairs, it's a United Nations agency, documented nearly 500 attacks by Israeli settlers, resulting in 4 Palestinian fatalities. That was only during the year 2021. Also, it leads to 175 injuries and extensive property damages. This is the highest level of incidents and attacks since OCHA started recording settler-related violence in 2005. This figure represents 40% of increase compared to the year 2020 and 50% of increase compared to the year 2019. Not only that, settlers have also vandalized at least 12,500 trees this only year. That, as an average, this is 1,041 trees damaged per month. That increase considered 26% if we compare it to 2020. In 2020, there was around 9,900 trees have been vandalized. Attacks and damages, whether it's full damages or partial damages, also affecting agricultural rooms, greenhouses, poultry farms, olive presses, etc. In 2020, the Israeli occupation attacks on agricultural lands and environment extended to 3,830 dunams in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. What does that mean? That means it might include bulldozing, folding with wastewater, flooding with wastewater, torching trees, confiscation and destruction of irrigation system, and using land for military training or waste dumping sites. Therefore, the violence towards farmers and their lands has for sure a direct environmental impact, often leading to the inaccessibility and desertification of land in either air coordination areas or seam zones. Now, if we talk about the indirect or silent violence, I would only mention one example. It is what we call settlement activity and pollution of soil and air. The example, it's wastewater. Around the topic of wastewater, we have a video that we will show later. But first, let me give some information. So Israeli settlements cause direct damage to Palestinian environment through the discharge of wastewater. According to 2016 statistics, 40 million cubic meter of wastewater is discharged by settlements onto Palestinians' valleys and agricultural lands annually. Once compared to the wastewater produced by Palestinians in the West Bank, it stands at 34 million cubic meter per year. Considering the total population of both sides, then Israeli settlers produce an average 5 times more wastewater per capita than Palestinians. This is according to the Palestinian Central Bureau of Statistics in 2016. Although 90% of the settlements are connected to sewage network, only 10% of wastewater is treated. The rest is charged or discharged into Palestinian lands. I kindly ask Anthony to share animated video that was produced by PUI as part of our advocacy work in the beginning of 2021, just to give a case study of the wastewater on the village or the town of Nahalin in south of the West Bank. Anthony, could you please show the video?
Yes, here it is. I hope you can see it.
Again, I mean, this video is a good example of the indirect silent violence, as part of the contribution of settlement activities toward the soil, toward the land of the Palestinians. Now, as a result, these practices aforementioned lead to desertification of land, natural hazards, bushfire, like for instance, plant diseases, pollution of soil, water, air, shrinkage of grazing areas, which consequently leads to reduction in livestock. Now, also a good example that have like the different mentioned element above, which is access restriction, settler violence, whether direct or indirect, it's taking place during the olive harvest season. During the olive harvest season, like between 1st of October and 30th of November of this year, 2021, at least 298 farmers have been attacked while picking their olives. 16 of them were injured while picking their olives. Around 3,900 trees have been vandalized, out of which 794 were uprooted, 201 burned, 1,040 damaged or cut, and finally, crops were stolen from at least 1,821 trees. Now, as you can see, I mean, as you know, the olive harvest season is a very important season for Palestinians for their annual income. A lot of families rely 100%, 80%, 70% on their olive annual or their income from olive harvest season. Now, not only that, also the livestock have been affected. In 2021, 134 livestock, whether sheep, cow, donkey, horses, were killed, injured, stolen, or aborted by settlers. 32,000 chicks died as a result of burning poultry farms. 35 pairs of pigeons were lost after damaging their shelters. 278 beehives boxes were burned as well. Now, if we look at what we're doing as PUI to mitigate settler attacks across the West Bank, I would say like we have like 4 main activities. First and important one is emergency response. Normally, whenever there is a settler attack leading to property damages, PUI intervene on behalf of the West Bank Protection Consortium, which is a coalition of 5 organizations working in the West Bank to protect Palestinians from forcible transfer, to provide affected households by in-kind or cash, with a limited ceiling for sure. This is in the field of losses in the field of food security sector, shelter, wash, any kind of like losses falls under these humanitarian, let's say, sectors. What we do is like, for instance, we provide saplings, tree saplings, we provide seeds, we provide fertilizers, we provide activities to rehabilitate lands, we provide water carrying pipelines, we provide water cisterns, we provide agro tools. This is all under emergency response. Not only also we wait until the attacks takes place and settlers attack Palestinians, but also we become proactive and identify the most vulnerable communities in the West Bank that are vulnerable to settler attacks, provide them based on the discussion with the communities and consultation processes with rehabilitation of agro roads to ensure safe access to lands and from lands whenever there's an attack of settlers. We provide lighting streets to ensure there are visibility if settlers attacks during nights. We provide first aid kits, fire extinguishers, etc. Now, also in the aforementioned 2 specific areas of prior coordination area and seam zone, we provide what we call short-term livelihood support. That might include traditional support to olive farmers during the olive harvest season by providing them with cash to hire daily workers to ensure they pick as much as possible of the harvest during the limited days, which is from 1 to 7 days. In addition to provide them with also agricultural tools to ensure we are helping them accelerate the process of harvesting. In addition to that, also we intervene in the seam zone through coordination with the Palestinian Authority to provide rehabilitation for agricultural roads to ensure the sustainability of livelihood for Palestinians in the seam zone. Of course, this is a very complicated process, but it's after a while we reach the result, we reach the target thanks to the efforts done within the 5 organizations of this consortium, and also the support of the Palestinian Authority. Fourth element or fourth activity, it's the advocacy work. This is a cross-cutting activity that it takes place across the year. It might include lobbying tours to reach out to parliament members in Europe to inform them or learn them about how violations of international humanitarian law is taking place in Palestine, what their reaction should be, what they have to do to change the policies of the Israeli government. We produce fact sheets, we produce infographics. I think in the package that we will provide later to this presentation, you will have like the infographic on olive harvest season. We produce animated videos like the one we showed earlier. We carry out diplomat visits to show them, meet with affected people affected by settler attacks and other, let's say, Israeli government measures. We have like some kind of proactive events like the one we did before the olive harvest season for diplomats as well. We produce situation reports, case studies, success stories, some illustrations and diagrams to tackle the settler violence phenomenon. Now, what's next for PUI in this year 2021 in the field of environment? PUI would like to commission a research paper or a report to highlight and analyze the environmental impact of settler violence, highlighting access restrictions, settlements activities in Palestinian lands, livelihoods and food security. Of course, this research should highlight the environment prejudice caused by the occupation enterprise as a key element of the coercive environment, causing of forcible transfer and silent settler violence. Also, this report should help quantify and analyze the extent and impact of environment crime of the occupation enterprise and de facto annexation on Palestinian lands and livelihood in the occupation West Bank and Jerusalem. Thank you for listening. I think I will leave it now for Anthony to proceed for Gaza.
Thank you, Aboud. I will give the floor to Hazem, who can explain the context in the Gaza Strip and the environmental impact of the blockade.
Thank you, Antonio and Aboud, and good evening all in the time of Palestine. Please allow me to quickly introduce myself to all dear participants. I'm currently working as a FSL project manager for Premier Urgence Internationale in Gaza. I have 10 years experience in humanitarian projects management and currently lead the implementation of several projects in the field of emergency response and food security in the Gaza Strip. Actually, it's my great pleasure to participate in this online webinar about the environmental prejudice in the occupied Palestinian territory, to talk about the main violations that have negatively affected the environment in Gaza Strip over the past years, as well as their impacts on the livelihoods of affected population, with a specific focus on farmers, fishers, and herders working in the access restricted area, which I will come to its definition in a later stage. I would like to deeply thank the organizers at the Jerusalem Fund for giving me this opportunity. So let us start with giving a quick overview about the different violations in Gaza context and their consequences on the environment and the livelihoods, knowing that I relied on some official secondary sources beside information products and fact sheets issued by PUI during its 13-year work experience in the RA. So I will start with the context, then I will move to the PUI response to these violations in the RA. So I will start with the different violations, the recurrent, especially focusing on the recurrent hostilities and the most recent hostility in May 2021. There was a total loss of to the agriculture sector amounting to $204 million due to the last hostilities on Gaza Strip in May 2021. More than 300 industrial and commercial facilities were damaged and 7 factories were completely destroyed. The burning of tons of pesticides, fertilizers, and agricultural materials such as plastic, nylon, and water pipe owned by a private company here in Gaza led to the emission of toxic gases from the burned pesticides. And this, according to the scientific resources and some official resources from the Ministry of Agriculture, this toxic gases are hundreds of times more toxic and dangerous to humans and environment than the normal toxicity of the pesticide during the normal use. According to the Minister of Agriculture here in Gaza, the fire changed the physical and chemical properties of the soil and the underground water reservoir. So it negatively affects the environment. Also, the fishing sector was badly affected during the recent hostilities. Because during the 2 weeks of the escalation or hostilities, Israel banned access to Gaza Sea for more than 14 days. And this led to a harm to over 50,000 people whose livelihoods depend solely on the fishing sector. I will move to the access restrictions on land and then on the sea. So to give a brief definition of the access restricted area in the Israel unilaterally imposed a maritime and land buffer zone widely known as access restricted area. They are no-go military areas on Palestinian territory. The Israeli military enforces the access by targeting civilian individuals, properties, and objects with various types of weaponry and artillery. The de facto implementation of the RA by land started after September 2005 when Israel executed its unilateral withdrawal plan from Gaza Strip. The RA was then formally imposed in 2008 when Israeli aircraft dropped leaflets over the Gaza Strip warning Palestinian residents not to approach within 300 meters of the separation fence, or the green light as we call it, and treating anyone doing so with a risk to their life. According to OCHA reports, the access restricted area reached up 1,500 meters from the fence, including a no-go zone of 300 meters on land, while the allowed fishing zones range between 3 and 12 nautical miles, depending on the security situation. Let me give some figures for the incidents reported by the human rights organization in the RA. So during the period extending from January 2019 to April 2021, 1,931 incidents were reported by the human rights organizations, including live fire, the destruction of land leveling, chemical spraying, opening of dams or floodgates to flood the agricultural lands owned by the Palestinian farmers. In addition to these repeated attacks targeting the farmers directly, the farmers who are working in the RA are always confronted with continuous raids by Israeli forces, destruction of their farmlands, leveling, area spraying, as I said, and opening of water dams. As a result, Palestinian farmers have been prevented from freely accessing their land, cultivating their fields, and having a stable source of income. This negatively and affected their income and led to a high level of indebtedness for the farmers. Because these restrictions imposed by the Israel have resulted in considerable losses to the Palestinian farmers and led to a sharp decline in their economic conditions. I will move quickly to the access restriction on at sea and the pollution of seawater. So for the access restricted area in the sea, it's imposed by The Israeli forces or the Israeli Navy enforces restriction on access to the sea through use of live fire that has killed and injured fishers by seizing fishing boats, valuable equipment, and arresting, detaining fishers even when they are within the permitted zone. As we said, it is from 3 nautical to 3 to 12 nautical miles from the seashore. The reduction to the fishing zone are often framed by Israel as a response to military activities from the Strip toward Israel. Actually, this practice of limiting access to Gaza water caused a deliberate harm to what was once an important sector of the Gaza Strip economy. And now this fishing sector is struggling to survive. This is to say that the fishing sector in Gaza Strip has been unable to contribute effectively to the Palestinian economy, as its contribution in gross domestic product remained very limited comparing with the previous years. For the incidents in the maritime area, between 1st of May 2019, this is just an example, to 30 June 2020, 133 shooting incidents were reported against fishermen while practicing their work, rendering 18 fishermen wounded and 8 fishing boats and dozens of fishing equipment damaged. Also, 15 fishermen were arrested and fishing boats were detained and dozens of fishing nets were confiscated by the Israeli Navy forces. I will now, during the next stage of my speech, I will be focusing more on the environmental impacts. So due to the limited access to the deep water, overfishing happens and negatively affects the marine environment, the whole marine. According to the report issued by the World Bank, many of fish that people depend on are already overexploited because they used to fish in a very limited area and most of the time during the last 10 years, between 3 nautical to 6 nautical, and sometimes they allow, depending on the security situation, they allow for the fishers to reach up to 15 or 12 nautical miles. This means limited access to income and deprivation of access to livelihood. Also, due to the acute electricity shortage and inability to operate the treatment plants, the sewage water treatment plants for 20 hours, the poorly treated water and even the raw sewage is pumped into the sea, affecting the entire marine environment and the public health of population. According to Gaza Coastal Municipality Water Utility, 20,000 cubic meters of raw sewage and 80,000 cubic meters of poorly treated sewage are discharged to the sea on daily basis. And this statistic from September is the most recent statistic about the quantities of sewage water pumped, raw sewage water and poorly treated sewage water pumped to the sea. And according to the Minister of Health, this contaminated water causes 26% of all illness in Gaza Strip and is the cause for more than 12% of a child death. Now I will move to the chemical spraying and the associated soil contamination. We have the chemical spraying, and this was reported by the farmers and was documented by the human rights organization here in Gaza. Since 2014, chemical spraying has happened at regular intervals during the 2 periods per year in December, January, and targeting winter crops, and then in April, targeting summer crops. According to the Al Mizan Center for Human Rights here in Gaza, this practice has directly affected the livelihoods of Palestinians, especially farmers and herders, and deprived them from accessing or the right to food. As claimed by the Israeli army, the aerial chemical spraying are performed along the border of the Gaza Strip is done and performed to enable the security operation and ensure the clear vision of any potential threats. The spraying caused an estimated damage to 4,936 dwelms of agricultural land. The period extended from 2018 to 2020. Also in 2017 alone, 2,848 dwelms also have been affected by the spraying. And these chemical spraying, according to the laboratory of the Minister of Agriculture and the Minister of Health, showed that this toxic material, it's actually Israel refused different times, several occasions to declare about the types of chemicals used to spray the crops along the border, but according to some laboratory tests at the Ministry of Agriculture, they show that these chemical substance known as oxygal, and it's a herbicide that suppresses the growth of certain plants. But any use of this herbicide contain oxygal must follow a strict material safety data sheet, and this not well known to the farmers here in Gaza. So there is a serious risk of harm for the farmers and their families because they are unaware of the impending spraying operations of the oxygal. Then I will move to the opening because I know that time ran off. I will move to opening of rainwater dams, floodgates. This another practice employed by the Israeli authorities to undermine the activities of Palestinian farmers and the ARA in the manipulation of natural flows. So when these dams have collected an amount of rainwater exceeding their capacity, and by the way, the Israeli side built dams all over along the fence with Gaza Strip to harvest the rainwater. But when the collected amount of rainwater exceeds their capacity and are at risk of flowing, the Israeli authorities opened their gates without any prior warning, resulted in sudden flows of water and caused huge damage to the crops, to the houses, and to the livestock, to other properties. According to Al-Mizan Center, Israeli forces opened water dams 7 times in the period between 2018 and 2020, affecting an estimated area of 197,430 square meters of land. These flooding operations or opening of floodgates affected the agricultural lands and also the damaged a lot of crops, and this caused huge losses or massive losses to the farmers and put them at high indebtedness level. The last part of my speech is about the PUI response in the Gaza Strip. PUI has been providing emergency humanitarian response to different vulnerable groups affected by the natural and man-made disasters I mentioned below in Gaza Strip, with a focus on farmers, fishers, and herders. In addition, youth and women workers have been also supported through the Cash for Work programs. During the previous years, we mainly provided multi-purpose cash assistance, unconditional and restricted cash assistance to affected families, conditional livelihood restoration grants to assist those families to restore their livelihoods and return back to their normal life after being affected by any disaster, in-kind agricultural inputs. In addition, we worked on improving access to water in light of recurrent blackouts through equipping agricultural water wells and ponds with solar energy. We supported hundreds of farmers affected by chemical spraying, opening of floodgates. Also now we are supporting around 268 farmers, vegetable farmers, both open field and the greenhouse farmers affected by the last 11-day hostilities on Gaza Strip. We also, during the last years between 2016 2018, we supported hundreds of women sheep breeders through income generating activities or conditional cash grants. Also, we worked on some preventive measures, and we are still working on some preventive measures to prevent the protection incidents in the access restricted area through equipping the solar energy for water wells, ponds, and also providing lighting system for the harbor in the Gaza Sea, small harbor, to improve the visibility for the fishers and prevent any or mitigate the risk of protection incidents. In addition to all these tangible, let's say, activities, we have the advocacy efforts to highlight the IHL-HRL violation, the RA, to the international community through preparing fact sheets, infographics, organizing diplomatic visits, participating in international events, success stories. And we are also working in strengthening and enhancing the monitoring, reporting, documentation system for the incidents in the access restricted area. In addition, we are trying to build a robust case referral system and a rapid response mechanism that enable an effective and timely response to the protection incidents. Thank you for listening, and I remain fully available for any questions. And sorry for being too talkative.
Well, if I may just thoroughly compliment you and thank you on this most amazing topic. I mean, we know about the politics of the occupation, the struggle to end the occupation from political point of view, the repression, the killing, and so on. But that is an area that is completely glossed over, especially in the Western media to which we are. We follow and we discuss and so on. And I mean, you raised hundreds of questions in my mind. Of course, I will not ask hundreds of questions, but really, I mean, it's such an amazing, intricate, I mean, thing that impact the daily lives of Palestinians in every which way, from the destruction of olive trees, the disruption of harvest and so on, to the inability of Palestinian fishermen to go about their daily lives and so on. But I want to begin by asking you, who are your main interlocutors? I mean, who do you address these issues for? I mean, and before you answer me, I just want to tell you, at least on my part, I will pursue that we do this kind of thing seasonally, not only once a year or something like this, because we want to know the impact, the updates, what happens, and so on. It's an area that we must give a good deal of priority to. So I like to begin by, as you guys began, by asking Anthony, you guys talked about prior coordination. How is that actually conducted? How is it conducted? How is it coordinated between, let's say, in the West Bank, between the Israeli occupation authorities and the Palestinian Authority and the Palestinian citizens, Muwatineen, and the same thing in Gaza, because you have two different governing bodies in the West Bank and Gaza, or that sector. So let me begin with that.
Yes, thanks. So, yes, the coordination regime is quite constraining for Palestinian farmers. So, as Aboud mentioned, we work a lot in prior coordination areas, which is Palestinian land very close to the illegal settlements, where Palestinians coordinate with. So mostly it's led by village councils and the Palestinian Coordination Liaison Office. They have to coordinate and apply to the Israeli authorities to get a permit to access their land. Then the procedure was after, if you remember, after the COVID, there was no coordination anymore. So it has had a huge impact on access to livelihoods in 2020. The coordination has been reestablished. Then even if there is a coordination, Palestinians get and have been granted access, it doesn't mean that they have actual access. They may have the access on the paper. When they reach their land, sometimes the gates remain closed. So although they have been granted access, the gates remain closed, and in the end they can't access the land, or the Israeli soldiers just prevent access. So even when the permit has been granted,
Sorry
it
to
doesn't
interrupt, Anthony, but this is an important point. You're saying that if they have a permit, they have access. In theory, I mean, even a paper that they can hold with them. Israeli soldiers at will can prevent a Palestinian farmer and so on from reaching his land, right? At will,
Yes.
For no reason. There's never been a recourse for that.
Anthony?
No.
So what do you do
Yes.
in this case? What do you guys, UPI, what does it do in this case?
Anthony, just let me elaborate a bit here. For the prayer coordination areas, there is no such as a paper, let's say, showing that you have a prayer coordination. Prayer coordination is like a one-side job. How that means? That means the ICA, the Israeli Civil Administration, announced in advance that those days, like between 15th, let's say, and 20th of October, is is a prayer coordination area. Those are days who Palestinians could access this spot or this plot of land in this village. Tamam. So once done, you can go, as Anthony mentioned, you could be either prevented by soldiers because you don't have a paper. It's just an announcement. It's just a coordination done by the Israelis and informed to the Palestinian through the British Council or through the BDCL, which is the Palestinian District Liaison Offices. So you might be under the mood of the soldier who is not allowed you to go in, or you might go in, but then if you are inside, you would be attacked by settlers. That very much happened across the season. Or you would go, you would have the access, but then you will find your trees have been cut, have been burned, have been stolen during the days that you were not allowed to access the area. That means prior to the days that you would access it. So this is how it goes. I mean, it's not just a matter of coordination. Even if you had the coordination, even if you had specific days to go there, they will be so complicated things that might at the end lose to Palestinians losing their income. Back to you, Anthony, sorry.
Yeah. By the way, you want to continue, elaborate a little bit, Anthony, or I have another question. There are so many questions.
I think it's very clear. It has a huge impact on the
So
on
you guys
access to settlers.
I think you guys mentioned something like 12,000 olive trees damaged in 2021, if I'm correct, or upward of 12,000 trees. In terms of actual volume of tonnage or whatever, volume of olives, how was that impacted in terms of the harvest, the size of the harvest, if I may? Yeah, look at that. It says, I see. Okay. Yeah.
I'm sharing this info that we have developed, where we can see the actual impact of the value of olive oil sector in Palestine, and so the different consequences. This has been shared, of course, with all our partners. It has been developed with communities and with UN OCHAs, and here we also clearly explain the access restriction as a major obstacle for the olive oil.
Anthony, going back to the question of Mr. Saeed, just to elaborate as well, we don't do coordination with the Israeli side. So our role is actually, after the coordination, our role is to support Palestinians who had the coordination in either providing them with cash to hire daily workers, again, to accelerate the process of cultivating their crops during those very specific and limited days, or through a provision of agricultural tools, again, to accelerate this process. So we're not involved actually in the coordination. We're involved in the after coordination, let's say, process.
Okay. But if I may, I also want to pose a question to Hazem. And I know my colleague, my young colleague, Ruqayya has lots of questions as well. But to Hazem, I know that the new wall fence, security fence, whatever, around Gaza has also, gobbled up a great portion of the land. But I know you probably mentioned that. What is the size of the land that was taken by the building of this wall around Gaza that has been completed, most recently? And then I'm going to ask you about fishing.
Yes, actually, for the fencing or the separation wall itself, it doesn't take land, but the access restricted area imposed on up to 1,500 meters from the fence constitute of 35% of the agricultural land, arable land in Gaza Strip, 17% of the area of the Gaza Strip, and the access restricted area in the fishing at the sea constitutes 85% of the allowed fishing zone according to Oslo Accords, actually, because the Palestinian fishers should reach up to 20 nautical miles, while they are allowed between 3 to 6 miles, and in the best scenarios they are allowed up to 9 and 12 nautical miles.
So let me ask.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Let me ask you about this area that you're talking about, the fishing area, the 2 nautical miles, 6 nautical miles, or 12 nautical miles, and so on. I know I have read in the past, incidents, reports, and so on incidents that fishermen would be out thinking that they have 6 miles of fishing area or 12 miles, then to find out that they actually have 2, and they get shot, they get destroyed, and so on. Could you explain to us, could you cite some examples on this?
I'm not sure if I got to your question very well.
I mean, while they're out to sea, as it seems, the occupation authority, the Israeli authorities impose, or they come up with a law that this area has been reduced to 2 miles, or this area has been reduced to 6 miles, whatever it is, unbeknownst to fishermen.
Yes, actually, the frequent changes to the fishing zone and to the access restricted area at sea make the fishers confused about this area, and the unavailability of the accurate GPS device that enable the fishers to know their location exactly put them at risk of sometimes exceeding the limited area, or even they are, I will give you some examples. We heard from the fishers that they are committed, or they are to the fishing area dedicated by the Israeli side at 6 nautical miles, and they were targeted when they were at 3 nautical miles from the seashore. Even it was announced by the Israeli side that they are allowed to reach up to 6 nautical miles, but on the ground they were targeted when they were practicing fishing at 3 nautical miles. We don't know the reasons, but this is what we always hear from the fishers and from the fishers representatives here in Gaza.
I have a question to all of you. I mean, the West Bank, to Anthony and Aboud, and then to you, Hazem, in Gaza. How in the West Bank, how does the Palestinian Authority, where does it fit in this equation? And conversely, of course, in Gaza with Hamas, how does it fit? How do they either facilitate or hinder your work? Thank you.
So we are non-political. So we don't deal with political. We are completely apolitical. But of course, we coordinate in the West Bank with the village councils members. We coordinate also, of course, with the municipalities both in the Gaza Strip and in the occupied West Bank. but otherwise that's it. We are completely independent and impartial, but we coordinate all our response with the UN humanitarian response plan, with the different clusters, so the food security sector, as mentioned by colleagues. And of course, we try to coordinate with, for instance, the national agenda in terms of ensuring that we empower Palestinians and making sure that Palestinians have access to public services when available, which is difficult in Area C, as you can imagine, in the occupied West Bank. We cannot hear you, Said. I think you're mute.
Sorry, I'm still muted. I want to be totally focused on listening to you guys. So Hazem, could you share with us how Gaza, I mean, how do you deal, or if you come across, maybe you don't deal, maybe you're totally left alone or not, you don't have to interact with the governing authority in Gaza?
No, actually, I don't have a lot to add to what was said by my colleague Anthony. Actually, we are coordinating at the technical level with some technical department, and as Anthony said, with the municipalities for some infrastructure work, and for the technical departments at the different ministries with the technical groups, the food security, different sectors, food security, shelter, protection, and WASH for the implementation of our activities to make sure that we are working within the national plans, and we are providing an effective response without duplicating the efforts of other organizations. And we coordinate with other humanitarian actors working in the same sector to ensure that we avoid any duplication in the provision of our assistance or any overlapping. But for
okay, let me go back to you, Anthony. While we get Hazem back, let me go to you. I mean, I asked this in the beginning. Who's your main counterpart? Let's say, suppose you want to raise this in America, in Washington, who do you come to? Who do you turn this thing to? The same thing with the UN, because we have the rapporteur who has a monthly meeting on Palestine. These issues, I don't recall that these issues are really regularly raised. I don't want to say ever raised. I don't know, but please.
Yes, so we coordinate a lot, and we meet a lot here, the different diplomatic missions in Jerusalem. So we meet a lot of the EU member states here to remind them in terms of their accountability. As third states, they have also an obligation to ensure the occupying power comply with international law. And so it's also a responsibility of third states, so the EU member state, but also the US, to ensure and to maintain and to ensure that the occupying power comply. So we meet a lot here in Jerusalem. We also meet a lot in Europe, so both at capital levels in Paris, but also at the European level. So a lot of discussion taking place. We also coordinate a lot with bigger agencies, with a forum of international organization to really have a stronger voice, I would say, to ensure that our messages are relayed internationally.
Okay, let me ask you a question. There's many technical questions and so on, but I want to ask you about funding. I know that you guys, you're Paris-based, correct? I mean, that was my understanding. Who are your main? Are you, to put this in any other words, are you allowed to sort of do funding efforts and campaigns on your own, or do you have to depend on already established funders?
Yes, so we mostly rely on institutional donors. So a lot of EU member states, but we also receive funding from the Jerusalem Fund actually in 2020 to support our work during the olive harvest season and to ensure that Palestinians have safe access to their lands. But it's mostly, we don't do campaigns. We really mostly receive fundings from international donors, so EU member state, the European Union, particularly, and UN agencies.
Before I turn to my colleague Ruqayya, because she has a couple of questions, I don't want to take all the time. We have already are over time. I hope you don't mind being with us for a few extra minutes. But how often do you update your fact sheets or your data? How often do you update it? Because this is something that is constantly changing.
Yes, so we try to update it on regular basis. So it's every quarter, but we also update it on ad hoc basis whenever. So we have an advocacy colleague who really make sure that they update fact sheet, but they also develop new fact sheets. So for instance, now we are working on the fact sheet regarding outposts. I mentioned it. We are talking about illegal settlements, but unfortunately, there are also establishment of illegal outposts. And this trend is quite worrying because an outpost may become a settlement in the near future. And a new outposts mean new grabbing of Palestinian land. And we have seen quite worrying trends of establishment of outposts. So it's a new fact sheet that we will develop. Sometimes we develop it on our own as Première Urgence Internationale. Sometimes, again, we coordinate with other agencies and other organizations to develop a more, I would say, contextualized fact sheet regarding, for instance, coercive environment in the West Bank or access to livelihood in the Gaza Strip. So this is done on regular basis, and it's available on demand to me or to colleagues at Première Urgence Internationale.
Okay, this is really most fascinating, and like I said, we could have you for a couple hours, but we don't want to do that. And I know you're busy and so on. Okay, would you like me to ask you a question for you, or you want to ask it yourself? Go ahead. Yeah, please. Ask the last question.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you very much. Primarily, what I would want to ask is how can I or anyone else in the United States or around the world, anyone watching this, can best support Palestinian farmers and fishermen in the occupied territories, especially all the isolated parts of land within the occupied territories that are split from each other, divided by settlements or under blockade in Gaza. What is, based on your experience, what you've seen in all the years you've worked there, what do you think is the best way to support these people?
Maybe I will let you, Aboud, start, and then I will go on.
Yeah, Anthony, could you somehow got all muggled up? You want to shut off yours? Sorry about this, but please go ahead, Anthony.
No problem.
Yeah.
Yes, no problem. So in terms of how we can support, so it's for us it's important to keep talking about what's going on in the occupied Palestinian territory, to keep the momentum and to keep talking about the challenges that the Palestinians are facing. For us, it's important also to ensure that we bring the voices of Palestinians and we ensure that village councils, we work with community and we make sure that communities are engaged in everything, in the design of our program. So of course there is, we do needs assessment and so on, but we make sure that we really work along with Palestinian communities, with village council, with farmers to understand the way they work, the challenges that they face. So for instance, what Hazem also was talking about, for instance, the shooting incident in the access area, it's Palestinian farmers who are telling us that they start receiving warning shootings at 1.5 kilometers away from the fence. It's farmers who are telling us the challenge they face in accessing their lands, although they got granted coordination by the Israeli authorities, as mentioned by Abu. So we are direct implementers. We implement directly. It's PUI colleagues, PUI staff who have access and who directly deliver assistance. Not only assistance, but also working with community to proactively work and prevent any emergencies. So we are not waiting that something happens. We work and we engage every single day with Palestinian communities. And I think, and this, we are doing this and we want to try to amplify the voices of Palestinians. We want to keep talking about the violation of their rights here in Palestine, but also at local and international level. And that's why I'm grateful for this opportunity in order to really try to to talk more about the situation, the coercive environment here.
Well, on that note, we come to the end of this session. It is really most fascinating. I hope that we do it again and again. I certainly want to push for that. And I want to thank you all. Thank Anthony, thank Aboud, thank Hazem, and of course, thank my colleagues, Ruqayya and Umar, and look forward to engaging you in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
you.
Thank you,
You are
Saeed.
always welcome. Thank you. Bye. Thank you, Ruqayya. Thank you, Omar.
Thank you so much. And let me apologize as well for the technical issues. And we thank you so much for your time and your commitment and your dedication and all of the extensive research. We will make this available soon after this event for any of you all who maybe have missed it. And you can, of course, follow us, the Jerusalem Fund, on our social media and follow PUI on their social media for all their updates and news and work that they are doing. Thank you all so much again, and we wish you the best rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.